This man built one of the largest auto parts companies in the world, Magna International, starting from a small tool and die shop with just a handful of employees, and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar global powerhouse. A man who's not only shaped industries, but influenced countries with his ideas on economics, innovation, and integrity. Frank Stronach is here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, well, I want to get the message across. You know, when we're young, we all hustle a bit to make some money so we can live in dignity. And when you get a little older, you sit back and sometimes you ask yourself, what's this all about? What's the purpose of life, et cetera, et cetera. So I did the same thing. I should say, I gave lectures right across America, from Harvard, right across America, right across Canada, right across Europe, right? And I was on the board on quite a number of universities. So in the last 10 years, I started to question myself. Well, I started to question the system. What is the mandate of a university? Well, the mandate of a university should be to teach young people how can we have a more civilized society. To be more specific, universities would be the ideal institution where we're looking for structures which would lead to an ideal society. Because at this time, there's absolutely no blueprint what would be an ideal society, right? So I think it's if you got no blueprint, we never will get the destination. We'll never find it, right? So anyway, that's what I came to the conclusion that the society or countries would need economic charters of rights. Without economic charters of rights, you really cannot have democracies. In essence, I'm saying the human charters of rights alone are not sufficient. We have to fortify it with economic charters of rights. Economic charters of rights will lead to economic democracies, and economic democracies as such are democracies by itself. Okay, that's the message. Or in a more simple way, I'm saying all politicians, all business people, pretty well all people agree, if the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. If the economy doesn't work, we cannot feed the hungry. We cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. But we do not talk, the most important subject, we do not talk what drives the economy. The economy is driven by three forces: smart managers, hardworking employees, and investors. The message I want to get across loud and clear is, without workers, you can't make a profit. So I'm not preaching to take away from the rich. I'm saying we gotta let employees participate in baking the economic pie. Everybody would win. We all would get a bigger slice. So that's the message I want to get across. So I'd be very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, number one, I align with that, and I agree with it 1,000%. You would think that more people would understand that basic premise. I mean, it's deep and it's generous, and a lot of people don't think that way. What causes you to think this way?
Well, life is really, call it an evolutionary process. You know, life is a question of fate and circumstances, being at the right places at the right time, you know. And they've always said it doesn't matter how smart you are. If the stars are not aligned, it won't work. So let me, there were times when I was hungry not because I wanted to lose weight. I was hungry, I had no money to buy food. That leaves a lasting impression in your soul. So what drives me? I grew up in a war-torn Austria, you know, in Europe, right, during the war, and so I've seen just about everything there is, and I wanted to see the world. I come from a working class background. I applied for a visa to South Africa, Australia, the United States, and Canada. And Canada came first through with the visa. Sometimes I'm a little tough on the Canadian bureaucracy, but they came first through with the visa, so I give them praise too sometimes. So anyway, I've seen everything here. I'm a tool and die maker by trade. I didn't take me long to find a job in a very small company. And after a few months, the owner said to me, Frank, you're doing a great job. I want you to be a partner of mine. And my chest swelled a little. But he was a nice guy. He never wrote it down. But I said to myself, there's nothing to run a business. So I looked in the papers. I found a job. I got paid a lot more money. I rented a small room with the toilets and the showers were out in the hallway. And out I went hustling. You know, so after 3 years, I came in 54. In 57, I had $5,000 saved up. I rented a small building, a big garage, you might say, and I bought a few used machines. And out I went hustling. I went into factories and I said, I'm very good in solving problems. If I can't solve them, you don't have to pay me. But only after 1 month, I hired somebody. After a year, about 10 people, and then I had 20 people, you know, working. And then the first evolutionary circumstances set in.
Well, when you came here, or when you came over, you basically had a toolbox and some dreams. Walk me through what were the hardest lessons that you learned when nobody really knew your name and you were just trying to survive.
Well, the hardest lesson was I had $2 when I arrived, and that didn't last that long, right? So I landed in Montreal first, and then I knew a fella, not a close friend, but a fella which emigrated to Canada, and so I took a Greyhound. With the last monies I had, I took a Greyhound bus ticket from Montreal to go to Toronto, near Toronto, and I had the street address. So I asked people, what whereabouts I have to go to find that address. And so after about 2 hours, I found the thing. I hope he's at home, you know. And so I knocked on the door. I found the address. And so an elderly lady opened up and I said, look, there's somebody to see you, you know. It was my friend, right? He came down and he said, look, you kind of look rough. Yeah, you must be hungry. I said, sure I am, right? So those were some great welcoming words. And the next day he helped me. His name was Max, right? The next day he helped me to find a job. But there was a great recession in 54. But I did find a job in a hospital in the kitchen. You know, I felt so bad for me because I was with a bunch of elderly ladies, nothing against elderly lady. My mother was an elderly lady and I liked her a lot, but I felt sorry for myself. I thought, gee, when I moved to Canada, maybe I cut some trees down or move some stone. So I was washing dishes and with elderly ladies. And so I was just dying to get away to be amongst young people. In those days, there was slow dancing, right? You know, when I danced with a girl, what's your name, where you're from, and what you do? Well, I say, work in the hospital. My hands were so smooth from washing dishes. So some of the girls thought I was a surgeon. Sometimes I played on a bit. But later on, you know, as the dancing or the conversation went on, I said, I just, you know, work in the kitchen. And then the girls don't want to dance with you close to them when you work, you know, just be a dishwasher, right? But anyway, those are the experiences you go through. And I think that forms your life, right? So, but anyway, as I said, when I arrived in Toronto, after 3 years, I had enough money saved up, and I rented a small garage and some used machines, and out I went hustling. I went to the factories and said, I'm very good in solving problems. If you can't solve them, they don't have to pay me. So after 1 month, I hired somebody. After a year, about 10 people. After 2 years, 20. And I left there, right? And said, then an evolution took place. I noticed my foreman was a little different. I said, his name was Herman. I said, Herman, what's the matter with you lately? Well, Herman said, I like to start my own business. I said, well, I can sympathize with that. But I said to him, let's talk tomorrow. Maybe there's a better solution. Like in life, you always got to look for better solutions. So that evening, I was talking to myself and said, if that foreman's got to leave it, that would stifle my growth. I didn't like that. The next reason was, if that foreman's got to leave me, I got to work myself. I liked it even less. And the third reason was, if I hire a new foreman and I don't show him how a business is run, I still get to do all the work. But if I show a foreman then how a business is run, after 1 or 2 years, they're going to leave again because they want to start their own business. So to make a long story short, I said to him, look, the next day I talked to him, I said, look, why don't we open up a new factory? I own 1/3, I own 2/3. And he said, you mean it? I said, yes. We went right away to a lawyer. They wrote it down, and Herman, that was his factory. He worked like crazy. He was so proud, and he made a lot of money. So I took the next 4 months, over the next 5-6 years, I took every year another foreman and built another factory. So after 7 years, I had 7 factories, lots of cash flow, and I got philosophical, and I said, gee, I saw this big market out there. How can I get the employees involved? And I converted the private company to a public company. And I put in a corporate constitution. The corporate constitution basically outlined the way the profits allocated. 20% of the profits went to the shareholders. 10% of the profits went to the employees over and above their wages. 6% went to management. 7% to research. And 2% to charity. When I put that profit sharing formula in, our profits went up 40% the first year, 100% the second year, 200% the third year. When you engage employees in a tangible way, that they get a portion of the profits, you release an energy of untold proportions. They're in the front line. They know what they have to do. So the message I want to get across, let the employees participate in baking the economic pie.
Dude, that's awesome. And you know, obviously Magna became a global powerhouse, but it wasn't by accident. What was the one principle or philosophy you built the company around that never changed even when the money started flowing?
Well, what made us really strong, I did not allow factories to go beyond 300 employees. So employees didn't become a number, and the manager has to interface with them. So basically, a manager came to me once and said, Frank, I want to make more money. I said, that's nice to hear. There should be. I'd like to hear that when people want to make more money. All you have to do is just be smart. Well, he says, look, you're stifling me because you don't allow more than 300 employees. I said, I'm not stifling you to be smart. If we be smart, you should make more money. So I would be happy to pay you more. But so we gone back and forth. But finally, I said to him, look, if you replace yourself, if you groom the assistant manager to become the manager and to replace yourself, I pay you some monies for that. I pay you that you get a little smaller percentage in this factory, but I give it the monies to build a new factory. Okay, so he's starting to get the point. So basically, what I'm saying is, I had many managers which replaced themselves, and some of them made 10 million a year, right? So it was a totally decentralized system. We could not fire a manager. We could only fire a manager if he broke the law, or if he didn't make a profit for 2 years. So we had a system when the managers saw they were better off to run under the corporate umbrella. That's what they did. But when they saw they'd be better off not being part of that, then they did their own thing. So no manager could say, somebody up in head office told me I had to do X, I had to buy from such and such a source. He would say the price was good, the quality was not good. That's why my customers are unhappy. The next time they would say the price was good, the quality was good. But the delivery was, but there'd be always something else. Our managers did not have an excuse, so they were totally independent. So we had over 400 factories, but 440 factories in 34 different countries. I could have lived in dignity any one of those countries. I chose Canada, but we have a problem. We got okay. The problem is the same thing as in the States. Both countries are very similar in its goodness or in its problems. So what you have when the first computers came on the market, about 20 years ago, the slogan was, when you get one of those computers, you could eliminate it on office floor. So nowadays, I see 20 times more office buildings in all the cities in the States as well as in Canada, right? What do you think they're doing there? They don't make products. They make regulations. We're getting further and further away from a free society or from free enterprise. Free enterprise means without free enterprise, there's no free society. But we're getting so over-regulated that there's more regulators now than people want to make things. So that's we got to take a look to reduce that.
So you were basically building leaders. That's what you did. You gave people opportunity that were working with your organization, and you created leaders.
I created partners, right? Leading partners, right? Because they all had a percentage of the factories. But the more often you replaced yourself, the more money is earned.
100%. Like, was that just your good nature, or did you somehow like learn that from someone, or did you read a book or something? How would you have the instinct to share in the profits, which would cause that kind of growth and that loyalty?
Well, it's an evolutionary process, right? The circumstances set in at times, and you got to make solutions. So it was circumstances which I came to that, right? But on the other hand, I do have where I came to the conclusions now. Economic charters of rights. We could eliminate poverty, right? Okay, and but besides that, right, I want to tell business, if you share with the employees, you make more monies. Get the employees involved in buying and baking the economic pie, and everybody will get a bigger slice.
So every business owner that's listening to this is basically being told, hey, take some of your profits and give it to your employees, and you'll make more profits than you would if you don't do that.
That's why I feel very strongly that I've proven that. I had over 400 factories, and all they operated that way. Okay, so that's the message I want to get across. The message is, I have some worries, right? About 50 years ago, right? Wall Street was pushing business. You got to make more money. You got to make more profits. Unions were pushing. We need higher wages. So businesses took the easy way out. They all went to China with all the technologies. So for the last 150 years, the United States was dominating the world, but it's not anymore. So we have to be careful. What will the future bring? How will the world develop? Basically, we went up with two cultures, right? The two economic cultures. One is the communistic system, and one is the capitalistic system, right? So the communistic system, and I spent a lot of time we put in because we had a lot of factories in Russia, also a lot of factories in China. We had factories where our customers went. When General Motors and Ford went to China, we went along with them, or to Russia, we went with them. But let's take a look at China, or Russia, it's the same thing. 10% of the population there are part of the army. And another 10% of the population are the super bureaucrats. And the army and the super bureaucrats, which is 20%, let's say, of China or Russia, they tell the 80% what's good for them in very specific terms. Don't step over the line. So that means there's very little freedom. What we have in America is somewhat to the extent where 1% holds 50% of the wealth in America. And the 1% tells the 99%, look, you got all the freedom in the world. You also are free to be hungry. To a kid in inner city Detroit or New York in the Bronx, the human child of rights doesn't mean a lot. You're only free to be hungry. So basically, we gotta make sure to eliminate poverty, and we can't do it if we have economic charters of rights.
Yeah, I like that. Again, Lightspeed VT is one of my companies. I will adopt your theory. I just need to know how to share with them. In other words, who would I call in order to set up some sort of profit sharing for employees?
I'll make sure before we part that you or right afterwards that the right emails, etc., you get. But we are just in the process of creating an academy. You know, we call it the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, or shortened SAFE, Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. So where the philosophies, the way I built this company to over 180,000 employees, 40 billion in sale. So those, you don't learn that in universities, right? And I have been on the board of quite a few universities. I gave lectures from Harvard right across the United States, gave lectures right across Canada, right across Europe. So basically, we wanted. So we see young people when you graduate from university or high school or colleges. So we like to teach them how to be an entrepreneur, you know, and how to run factories or businesses which are beneficial not only to the owners but also to the workers, right? So that's really, it's a whole new way of teaching. This is when I spoke with Richard. He said, "You be the right guy. Maybe we should look at business is always." Anytime we do business, it's got to be good for both sides, right? You have accumulated a lot of know-how. I think we have accumulated know-how how companies are run, and we could share those information maybe with your organization. And because I think this is a worldwide, I think the United States will be hungry for an economic system like that, and so is Canada. And Europe's kind of, Europe and South America, socialism has set in very much so, where the state does more and more, and the bureaucrats and all the rest, they're not so much in because it would take power away from them, right? But call it the United States and Canada, the last two bastions where the free enterprise system hopefully can survive. But we gotta change that. And again, I want to stress, I'm not preaching to take away from the rich. I'm preaching to the workers gotta participate. Let them participate in economic. We can change it with economic charters. And the SAFE Academy, we could teach people how to share the profits for the benefits of all people.
Well, folks, if anybody's interested in that, it's called stronachacademy.com, STRONACH Academy, Stronach Academy. Is it Stronach or Stronach? How do you pronounce your name perfectly?
Well, Stronach. You spell it. It's easy to pronounce. Stronach.
StronachAcademy.com. Well, you got me sold because, and I think you're going to sell a lot of people on this. I don't think there's a lot of greed in the world to the point where they don't want more. In other words, you've got me sold because you said the right thing. You said, if I want to grow my revenue, which I do, and most business owners do, the trick is, and you've proven it, to basically let your employees participate. So only because you're a billionaire and I'm not, and I want to be. And I always believe you got to find someone who's already done it and then do what they did. So I don't even need to be sold on it. I just need to know how to do it. And what you're saying is stronachacademy.com is where entrepreneurs, business owners can go and learn how to set up these profit sharing and these charters of rights.
Yes, we're going to send you some material where, where we show exactly how Magna was run. But again, the idea is that the college or the academy would teach aspiring entrepreneurs how to get started, right? And it would teach already small businesses how to get a bigger business, what they have to do. So those are the things we would teach or would expose or provide solutions which you do not, which it's not taught in any other school, right? Because we call the teachings the fair enterprise, the fair enterprise. So it's a whole new way of teaching, using examples which are used on a day-to-day basis. Basically, it relates to people. It's really, it boils down what you have to do, because there's an enormous potential in everybody. You just have to bring it out. You got to say, look, if you guys get a portion of the profit, so if they are on the front line, they can see how to get things done. And we want to transmit that kind of education to young entrepreneurs and to existing small businesses, so for the benefit of society. Because going that way, I think we could eliminate poverty. So it's better for the for the business people, and it's also great for the society. So what I like to do, the only way I do things, I got to see. I gave a lot of lectures in universities. I always told the students, look, the success of life can only be how happy you gotta be. That's the success of life. But at the same time, I told the students, let me tell you from my experience, it's a lot easier to be happy if you got some monies. The smart students would have asked, well, how can we make more money? So I said to them, look, in your 20s, you don't know yourself. Experiment a bit. You got to do something what you enjoy. When you enjoy something, you're going to be good in it. If you put in the extra effort, you could be one of the best, whatever you're in. If you be one of the best, money is a byproduct. But at the same time, I tell the students, look, you're so fortunate that your parents helped you a bit to have a high education. And I said, I have no problem that students have a right. The know-how, the wisdom they accumulate in universities, but at the same time, I told them, look, a portion of that knowledge gotta flow back to society. So business should be run that a portion flows back to society. And the interesting thing is, business would make more monies. I've proven that in over 400 factories, right? That works. Profits understood in China, in Russia, in Italy, in France, in Brazil, all over, right?
Yeah, because they take ownership where normally
Yes.
maybe they wouldn't.
Well, this is where I'm saying the world came a long way, right? From the caveman to the hunted, to the kings and the servants, and now we have the bosses and disgruntled employees, right? We got to get away from that. We got to, employees should be partners. We don't it's great, if you arrange it a tangible way that they share, you trigger an enormous energy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm excited to get it going. I mean, personally, again, it's a little less in upfront. People think like, "Oh, I'll just get less," but in reality, what you're saying is you'll actually end up with more. So the way to grow your revenue, or one of the ways to grow your revenue and help society and help your employees, is to profit share. Who does
Is
someone call to get that set up? Like I'm willing to do it at my companies. I'll
yeah,
profit share.
we will have all the it's relative new, but over the next 2 3 weeks we all set up, and people can we will show it on the internet, etc. And we people just can plug into it.
Dude, this is going to be amazing. StronachAcademy.com, folks, if you ain't paying attention. Listen, where can you get coaching from a freaking billionaire entrepreneur that's already proven the model, and you know you're going to make more money? So that's the best part. It's like it truly is win-win. Hey, give a little to the employees and get a lot more for yourself. I don't see anyone who would be against that. How would you pick the managers? Because I'm assuming everybody wanted their own factory. Didn't everybody come to you and say, hey, I want a factory? How would you select which one actually got one?
Well, the whole thing is you got to start out right and I said early on, companies below 300 people, you don't really need regulators. So like small business, we got to take the tape off, the red tape off small businesses, right? And the small business, you got to teach people, look, if somebody works harder and smarter, you got to give them a bit more, right? You got to share profits, or say you get a bonus, you get or get some ownership. There's lots of ways. Let each businessman, let's say, in a small business, the tax man has no business to be in a small business, right? Because small business want to grow, and they rather hire a new employee, and the governments make more monies by income tax from the employees, because small business make very little monies, and they rather buy a new machine or hire an employee so they can grow. And so if we take the red tape off and the business taxes and all what goes along with it, the tax people analyzing, when you be a small business, can you write that off? You had some beef stew with a customer, etc., etc. Right, all the regulation you got to go through. If you free small businesses, right, we could really the economy would blossom and bloom, right? So we gotta get the state out of small business, have a minimum, only 2 regulations, workplace safety and the environment. You cannot dump poison environment in your backyard. So if we give small business the freedom to operate and take the regulators out and the taxmen out, man, the economy would just boom, right? And everybody would benefit. Workers would make more money. It's their purchasing power, right? It's the whole thing is we need economic charters of rights. And again, I to simplify, as I started out to say, all politicians, all business people, well, all people agree. If the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. If the economy doesn't work, you cannot feed the hungry. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, the handicapped. So we must do everything we can. It's the economy, the economy, the economy. And the economy works better if workers participate. That's we got to see. Every businessman would make more money, but most of all, we could eliminate poverty. I think that's what it's all about.
Well, that would be a lovely thing. So raising minimum wage isn't what your concept is. What do you think when people are saying, okay, well, this is our attempt to do what you're talking about, and we are going to force business owners to raise minimum wage? It's not the same thing, is it?
You gotta leave small business alone. Like as a small business, you gotta see who works harder. That's what we call free enterprise. We gone so far away from free enterprise, but we gotta realize without free enterprise, There is no free society. We got to get all those regulators out of small business below 300 people and let the owners, they learn pretty quickly that you got to pay somebody which works hard and smart, you got to pay more. Might it be a bonus? Might it be a portion of the profits, or might it be equity? Let the small business owner decide. So the small business, we can, look, when we look back, when I built my first factories in the States about 50 years ago, right? So things were different, right? It didn't take you long to get a permit. You had a permit within a day, But now, if you build something, it takes you a few months or years to get a permit to this, full with regulations. So the United States, I think, was great about 60, 70 years ago, right? You could, there was very little interference with regulators. You had trade councils which banded together and say, we got to do this. We want to build building. You had building engineers so that the snow didn't make a cave in, or the wind didn't blow it over. All those things were in hand, but we are way over-regulated.
You've met a lot of people in your life, I'm sure, heads of state, all kinds of people. Who was the most aligned with your vision out of all the world leaders?
I think I provoked their minds, because in politics, I know most of the politicians. I have many former prime ministers on our board, at the president of the World Bank on our board. Most of the politicians are pretty good. They mean well. But the whole point is, you always find young politicians, they're gang-ho, they want to change, want to do great for the country. And the older politicians say, look, we can't bring forward something new. Because if we bring forward something new, we can be criticized. We won't be elected. But Churchill, Churchill, which I thought was the greatest politician, I would call him the greatest statesman. Churchill said, Parliament doesn't work. There's only politicians in Parliament. The mandate of a politician is to be elected or re-elected. That means things are not done in the interest what's good for the country. So Churchill said, we need a chamber of citizens to balance out the politicians in Parliament. Okay, but we are in the United States and Canada. If we, small business would be a chamber of citizens, because they all will play on the same level playing field. Okay, so when you look at the tax code, right, 100 years ago there was about 7 pages. Now there's about 75,000 pages. It's so convoluted, right? It's so that look, it's just special interest groups. So we got to take a look. Most politicians, they're frozen in the system, right? They are trapped in the system. They can't move. We got to change the system. In a civilized society, nobody should be discriminated. We all to blame to a certain extent. I would not blame the bureaucrats, but I would say that I would not fire bureaucrats. I would say, look, we have a hiring freeze now. They'll bring down the bureaucrats, right? Okay, so we got to say the worst thing is when governments when they don't have balanced budgets. Every housewife knows she cannot spend more than what the husband brings in on money. Otherwise, they wind up in a poorhouse. Every farmer knows they cannot spend more than what the farm gets for his crop. Otherwise, they know they lose the farm. Every small business woman or man know if they spend more than what the profits are, they lose the business. Politicians, that's the one thing we got to prevent. We need balanced budgets. And again, it's not a chainsaw thing. So over 20 years, we could reduce the debt by 5% a year. And in 20 years, we should be debt free. That be Canada, the United States. It would be great. But without, we print monies like crazy. We cannot. There must be politicians, there must be handcuffs that they must balance the budgets.
Yeah, well, that's Sounds like common sense, but I don't know why they don't listen to that. What do you think of Elon Musk and Donald Trump doing what they're doing with
I,
Doge here in the United
I,
States?
I think United States needs that. It needs what call it a bit of a cleansing process, like because it's way overdone. You know, with the programs, it just haywire. Billions, a few billion here, a few billion there. I think I think if they would get to know a bit by because they didn't share the profits with the employees, but it's you see in my case it was more or less an evolutionary process, right? See, I've gone to different stages. So I think they would I spent some time with Trump, with the president. I think he would be open to economic charters that small companies could operate freely under that, and large companies, we got to harness the capitalistic system when it gets large, because basically, there's less and less capitalists every day in the United States or in the world, right? And in nature, when you got a species which does not reproduce itself, another species will take over. And the laws of nature are much stronger than any man-made law. So we got to think in those terms, right? Because down the road, we could wind up maybe with 10 capitalists in the whole world. But you won't go to that because you got the communistic system coming up. Okay, if we don't start sharing, if we don't make capitalists out of the workers, we have a problem. We gotta make capitalists out of the work, but let them share, let them build some capital. We gotta aim for that. Otherwise, we're gonna run over by the communistic system. Because when you've been Beijing or Moscow, they don't show you how Americans live in Beverly Hills. They show you how people live in inner city Detroit, Chicago, New York. We gotta do something. Economic charters would eliminate the poverty, and everybody would make more monies.
If you were the Prime Minister of Canada, what would you change about the Canadian rules?
Well, it's unfortunate. We gotta make sure that we look. First of all, Trump had the right to say, "Look, every country in the world, we subsidized every country in the world. That's those times got to be gone." He's right to do so. But now I think Canada should say, where were we subsidized? If it let's correct that. We don't want to be subsidized. We want to be an equal partner. We want to be a great neighbor, because we got to realize the United States and Canada are the custodian for a free society. So we got to be very careful that we don't weaken the countries, that we weaken the economy. So we should revisit. And I'm pleading with Donald Trump, and hopefully have a chance to talk with him. We gotta, yes, you got the right that you pointed it, and it has to be done. But if we came that we were not subsidized anymore, that should make a neighbor content. That we say, let's go forward, let's do things together, and each pay the appropriate share. I think it's so important. We cannot get a divide in the two countries. Okay, so we gotta revisit, and we gotta preach it over and over. We gotta find an answer, because this way it hurts business in the United States, it hurts business in Canada. It's not the right, but Donald had the right thing to say, and actually, as a president, he had the obligation to do that. But I think he's smart enough. I hope he does see the thing that we could correct it and go forward as great neighbors, and there's two countries which would be the custodian of the free society in the world.
If you were talking to a young business owner that just started his company and he had big visions of growing it into a massive conglomerate like Magna International, what two principles would you tell him to go on to hope he succeeds in his goal?
That's a very important question. What's important is everybody, before you think to go into business, you gotta search for the affinity a person has. What does a person like? Because and then you should, before you go in any business, you should, or start your own business, you should work for a while in a company which makes products what you like as a person, right? Okay, because then you would accumulate some know-how. Okay, and then you could go, let's say, to a big merchandising store and say, gee, I could make this product or this product or this product. The very key is first you got to define what do you like. You know, if you like something, you got to be good in it. If you put in the extra effort, you could be one of the best. If you be one of the best, then money is a byproduct. Okay, but you cannot just say I open up a business. Okay, accumulate. It's a different form of teaching that the Stronach Academy will teach to that a person could make those decisions, or the entrepreneurs, and we could teach them, but you gotta accumulate some know-how.
100%. Good advice. I always ask this question: what can the bomb squad, which is my audience, what can my audience do for you? It's hard to figure out what you can do for a man successful as you. What can we do to help you?
No, I don't need any help. My family's well to do. I don't have to worry ever to go hungry. My mission is, you know, when you get older, you sit back and say, what's the purpose, right? The purpose is I've been blessed with incredible good health and a good mind, and I'm saying if the stars are not aligned, things won't work. So my main thing is I want to make a contribution to a better society, and on my grave, hopefully one of those days, it would say Frank Stronach was a good mensch. Okay, so the key is we want to teach how to eliminate poverty at the same time that businesses will make a profit. That's the unique thing about it. But you don't learn that, and it's not taught in universities or high schools or yeah. So it's not. So that's a new way of teaching how can a businessman make more profits at the same time help society, help eliminate poverty. That's the key part about the whole thing.
And that's stronachacademy.com.
Yes.
The Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, to keep you safe and sound. Huh? How you like that?
Yes. Well, we like, look, you got a great audience. You got a great thing here. So I think we just got to come up. Richard spoke very highly of you, and I think you work with Richard, and it could be a thing that your company, you can grow further, that not only you make more profits, but your audience or your customers make more profits.
I think, again, people are going to be open to that, because at the end of the day, man, I think most entrepreneurs just want to grow their business and find success like you have. And again, I always tell people, if you want something, figure out what it is, then find someone who's already done it, and then emulate what they did. So you got one guy that's willing to do it here. I'm looking forward to logging in there and learning how to set it up for my companies, because I'm definitely going to do it. I don't think you'll get a lot of pushback from a lot of companies, because again, at the end of the day, they want to grow revenue, but I think they also would love to help solve poverty and set up a system that helps everybody win. Once somebody has all this money, because again, a lot of people are going to be like, Brad, how come we didn't talk about like him being a billionaire? So let's take a few minutes before I let you go. I know you're busy, and talk about, you know, what is it like knowing that you can pretty much have anything you want?
Well, it keeps you more stable, and you don't get jittery. You get I think you could, every day could be a great day, right? And especially, I think it's greater, much greater, more satisfying if you can give than to take. Huh? And the great thing is when you have money is that you could be very helpful or be involved in purposes which are great for society. That the great thing about getting rich is you could make a greater contribution to society by supporting programs, new programs, or old programs. But do again, it boils down what's the purpose. Like everybody's got to find the purpose, even if you're not do well to do. There's always something you could do that the society would gain and profit from it.
That's beautiful. Last question. You know, Warren Buffett says that he's not going to give his kids all his money when he passes. And I will obviously, I think, accomplish the billionaire status myself. And I do not understand why he says that. I feel like my family's going to get everything minus a little bit of philanthropic charitable donation. What's your position on that?
Well, it's the position you should, if you've decided to have kids, to make sure that they're somewhat secure, that there's somewhere that they would not have to go hungry. You got to make sure to do that. But basically, I've come to family business. Usually after one or two generations, they disintegrate. Okay, and in my case, I gave it a lot of thought about it. My kids are quite well to do. I prayed a portion loose, and that's Stronach International. I prayed about lose about 300 million, and there's no shareholders in there, and so I'm the only shareholder because I've been on the boards of NASDAQ, the corporate governance, so I have a great amount of knowledge how the market should operate and et cetera, et cetera. So basically, I have a board of directors. They have, after I'm gone, they run the business. And we have, that's another interesting thing, we would teach succession, right? And society should always, there's no need that kids have billions and billions, right? Okay, you should spread the thing here, right? And so the board every 5 years, the oldest director we could send it a structure there, right? Because whatever I do is open to the public, and the public should benefit from it. The key is we just gotta create a better economy, which would be helpful, and how we can eliminate poverty. So succession is so. One Buffett, I would give him my. It's great that he does that, right? Because I've done the same thing, right? And leave the kids with the lower thing here, and but enough that they wouldn't have to worry to go hungry, and then you spread the thing to, let's say, to people you kind of trust, the great boards, which common sense people, and let them grow, right? And so it doesn't get cliquish. Every 5 years, the oldest director resigns, and you give. So in our case, management and employees get 20% of the profits of Stronach International. 10% goes to charity. 50, I got 3 grandchildren. 5% each of the profits will go to my grandchild. 50%, so 55% is reinvested. That's basically, it's basically owned by the Canadian public, by Canadian citizens, right? But that's the way it should be, and hopefully many companies will operate that way. And we we have to eliminate poverty. And we can do it in a very constructive way, whereby individual businessmen make more monies, and there'll be more monies in for everybody. Give enough that your family has no thing here, because look, you just can't sit back and say, you got all the thing and be, no, it shouldn't. I think kids, even afterwards, should think, look, there should be a plan how the kids should spend their monies if they have plenty, and create better societies.
That's nice. That's noble. All right. Well, I appreciate you giving us some time, as always.
Anytime you want to have some, because I brought forward some unusual thing here, because it's world changing. The essence I'm saying, look, democracy as such does not, the human charter of rights alone is not sufficient. We have to support it with an economic charter of rights. Economic charters of rights will lead to economic democracies, and economic democracies as such of a democracy itself. That's what it has to lead to. Okay, and we can't do it in a very organized way, not in a chainsaw way, right?
100%. Love your passion. I appreciate you giving us the time today, folks. If you guys are smart, I would go to stronachacademy.com and get your name in there. You can learn all kinds of entrepreneur stuff, including succession. So when you do make billions of dollars and do share it with employees and the frontline workers, you have some training or some education on how to disperse it once you accumulate it. I'm going to need that course, because I was about to give it all to my kids.
No, you shouldn't do that. Make sure they have enough that they would not go hungry, and they could some play monies, and tell them, look, try to get together with some good guys and do some good business and get employees involved.
I like it. I like it. Hey, just out of curiosity, when you say enough to don't go hungry, let's say I have $1 billion and I have 7 kids and I pass. How much is enough to give each one, and then the rest off to grow?
Well, it should be that you could put in a trust fund where they only get so much out a year, huh? Okay, so if they pay, so if it's, let's say, if they with, I guess with $100,000, I think they could live and have a reasonable home, and have reasonable, and put the thing in trust fund so that they don't get it out that quick and maybe lose it, right? Okay, this way you spread it out so that they have a pretty safe environment till they close to death, and then they could again, if they have kids, they can do the same thing over and over again, right? Spread it around, and if there is and great boards with some great people, and try to focus where there's a need, where call it a board with 1 or 2 managers can create great things.
So you said $100,000 or 100,000 in cash, and then a trust fund that drips some money.
Yeah, 100,000 in cash that they could live, right? Okay, in a reasonable conditions, and they would get, depending on how much money is, they would get so much a year. You got to make sure that the kids don't blow it in the first 5-6 years.
Yeah, because
kids can easily blow $1 billion.
Yeah, well, I mean, studies show too that people that leave their kids all the money, they end up losing it.
Well, it needs some education, but you gotta try to set up some trust funds where they get it out all at once.
Makes sense. Well, Mr. Stronach, I appreciate your time today. I'm glad that we had the chance to talk. I think all the listeners are going to go to stronachacademy.com and probably sign up for that, start getting some entrepreneurial education from a actual successful billionaire that's built massive companies with the profit sharing and taking care of the employees as the forefront of his mission. And dude, I appreciate you coming on here.
Okay, it'd be great to be here, and from time to time we could have a follow up in it because it's an educational process. We gotta get Americans aware of that. Look, everybody would make more money if we share.
100%.
Okay,
Do you have a social media account or no?
uh, well, the company is a social media account, right, where we try to do good things for society.
Folks, and if you guys didn't write that down, his company he founded, well, it's a public company now, so it's
No,
public.
it's not public, it's a private company, Stronach International. But
Stronach International.
Stronach International, and my daughter has, you see, at one time it was the largest city landowner in America because I owned pretty well all the racetracks.
Oh yeah.
Yes, but my daughter is now, right? So I gave up about 15 years ago. I stepped back from Magna and I said I should do something where society benefits greater from my accumulated wisdom. And I decided to go into the agriculture because I noticed all the kids had allergies. Stage 2 diabetics was rising. So I came to conclude the more I got into the agriculture, the more I could see this huge chemical jungle. And then, in North America, 95% of the food eaten in North America comes from industrial farms. In industrial farms, you see no more eagles fly. You see no more pheasants. Why? There's no more rabbits. There's no more pheasants. We spray so much pesticide and fungicides, we kill everything. We kill the soil, we kill everything. Yeah. So this is grossly negligent. And I'm very happy that Kennedy sort of took over the portfolio, right, in the State Department, right, to try to provide more healthy food for kids. In the United States or Canada, no kid should go to school hungry in the morning. That means breakfast should be served. And no Canadian kid, American kid should leave the school hungry. That means lunch has got to be served. And by law, the food would have to be organic. Okay, that brings us to another matter, that family farms are practically on welfare. Kids on family farms say, Mom, Dad, I don't want to be in the farming. I don't want to be in welfare. We got to make it, look, it's the most noble thing to do to produce food. In countries which could feed its people never had a problem. The United States never had a problem with all the family farms, neither did Canada. So it should be, we got to have a great marketing campaign that the kids move back to the farm and have family farms. That's very important.
Family farms.
Yes.
Man, you're gonna be a hit amongst the audience. Folks, go follow this guy, Stronach International. You can find them on social media. But more importantly, if you want to get mentored or learn more about it, stronachacademy.com. Mr. Stronach, I appreciate your time today. Thank you for dropping bombs on my audience, and I hope that everything goes exactly as you describe. And you can come back anytime.
Okay, you look forward. I'll be anytime available if you need some more insight. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed being with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Talk soon. And folks, as always, till next time, keep it real.